Hi, I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine, your host for the Civics Connection. The topic on the table is targeting voters in congressional elections. Joining me are Democrat Bob Clement, who represented Nashville and the greater Nashville region from 1988 to 2003, and Republican Lou Frey, who represented Central Florida from 1969 to 1979. Congressman Clement, we'll start with you. Now, when you first ran, it was a very interesting nomination contest. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was an interesting race. I ran in a special election because the congressman ran for mayor of Nashville and was elected, which forced a special election, which was very short. And I was president of Cumberland University right out of Nashville, one of the oldest colleges in the United States. As a matter of fact, we had over 100 congressmen graduate there, 50 governors, 3 members of the U.S. Supreme Court and Cordell Hull all graduated from my school when I was president. But I resigned to run for Congress, and I had a tough time in the primary because I had 2 opponents that were extremely wealthy, and one of them spent $1.7 million, and he raised $1,500, and the other one spent $1.4 million and raised $50,000, and I spent $550,000. So I was being outspent 3 to 1, but I was rather well known in the district, and so I just kept hammering away at the issues. But we got to the general election, and that's when my opponent said, right in the middle of the TV debate, "I will never ever vote for a tax increase." And that's when I responded by saying, "That's the most irresponsible statement I've ever heard. I don't know what crisis might occur in the future. I don't know whether war is going to break out or what. And I'm going to do what's best for the people." And I voted for tax increases, but I also voted for tax cuts. And I was always fiscally responsible and hold departments very accountable, and it worked.
Mm-hmm. Now, Congressman Frey, how about you? Tell us about your first nomination contest.
No, I was a political accident. I had never been to a political meeting until I got home from the Navy here in Florida, and went to a meeting and saw how politics really could make a difference. So I decided to run. Even my mother thought it was a bad idea. I was a Republican in a Democratic district. I had no money. I'd never run for office before, and unlike you, I had no political background. So I spent 13 months going to 30,000 doors and knocking on the door. I'd written a brochure, hand it out, go back and do it. And I barely won the primary, but I won by the general by 65%. So the powers that be came down to figure out, okay, how did I work this strategy out and what did I do? And I had run on Vietnam. I'd run on the first vote in Congress, how important it is. I'd run on a balanced budget. And I thought I really knocked them down with these issues. Well, they took a poll and they found out that they voted for me because my mom and dad had a printing shop in Orlando and they dealt with them. My wife ran the Little League in Winter Park. I played in the Commercial League in baseball. And the 2 most important reasons they voted for me is because I looked like I needed a job, which was true at the time, and also that I looked like their grandson. So all the issues that I thought really made a difference and I targeted just went down, and it really taught me something too about it, is that while you can maybe target issues, you got to target people. Right. It's just not enough to get them involved in something. They may stop and look a little bit, but you got to go beyond that, and that's why I think the personal touch in politics, which you're losing today because of the incredible amount of money. My district I spent $150,000 on today, $2 to $4 million in each side. So it's a different kind of campaigning, I think, today, less personal and more relying on the consultants.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, Congressman Frey, in terms of your campaigns, what strategies did you use to ensure that you would be in touch with those voters most likely to vote for you?
Well, it was pretty simple. I just kept doing what I did during the campaign. I was at every Boy Scout meeting and every Girl Scout meeting. I spoke at every graduation I could find. I had about 8 coffees a day when I would come home. I campaigned harder from the day after election for the next 4 months than I did the rest of the 20 months. because people would say to you, what are you doing here? You know, the election is not for 2 years. And I tell them truthfully, I'm here because I'm interested. And you had an incredible lot of credibility. And once you get that personal touch, and once you identify with the voter, unless you do something dumb like, well, never mind, unless you really do something dumb, it's hard to get beat as an incumbent who has a good staff and has probably 4 or 5 offices in the district to take care of the problems of the people, of the voters.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Congressman Clement, in terms of targeting those voters, those constituents most likely to vote for you, what strategies did you employ?
Well, I had what's called Meet Your Congressman. I had direct mailings. I had what was called, which most members didn't do, a Call Your Congressman. He gave them a number to call in where they could talk to me personally. I made a lot of speeches, and I shook a lot of hands. Extremely available and accessible. And matter of fact, I had a pollster take a poll that had polled a lot of other members at that particular time and says, Congressman Clement, you came out number 1, that more people felt like they knew you personally. Now, a lot of members may have been better known than I was, but no one was better known personally, one-on-one, than me at that particular time, which made me feel good, because that way, even if they disagree with you, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm. And did you find when you were campaigning, did you focus on hot button issues, your personal or business experience, your political party? What emphases did you place in your campaign?
Well, you got to do both, because you know, some of these hot button issues, as Lou knows, I mean, if the media is following them, you know, you could say something about something else and they'll never cover it, or not appreciate it. So yeah, you got to stay on top of those hot button issues, whether it be education or national defense or Social Security or Medicare or some scandal or fraud or whatever it is. But I'd like to think a member would have priorities too, about what is important, what's their niche, how are they going to separate themselves from others, because there are 435 members of Congress. You can look at all of them as small business people, and every one of them runs their office differently, and by doing that, some of them operate extremely efficiently, as Lou knows, and some of them hardly operate at all.
Now, Congressman Frey, how about you? Did you emphasize hot button issues, your personal or business experience, your party? What kinds of emphases did you place on your campaign?
Well, I was on the Space Committee and I handled the Apollo and the shuttle and that, so you obviously spent a good deal of time on that. I was lucky enough to rewrite the communications legislation for 4 years with Van Deerlen, who was a wonderful guy as chairman. So I would pick out some of these, what I would say, important issues and spend a lot of time on that. But on the other hand, I also spent some time on issues like protecting the ocean from chemicals being dumped in it, or giving safety standards to people in mobile homes, which they never had. I sort of looked on him as, maybe from the Navy background, and he's a colonel in the Army, the targets of opportunity. Things would come up and there was obviously a need for some legislation, and so you would do that. One of the things we had, you could work with people on the other side of the aisle. Maybe your name wasn't on the bill, but a lot of times it would be. But if it was a good idea, that bill would move, and that gave you the sense of accomplishment that you made a difference. And because Bob was there, same reason I was there. We wanted to make a difference. We really believed it is not a game. There are good people in Congress. That today there are Democrat, Republican, staff people. This country is built on the foundation of the Constitution, and the Congress Article 1 is probably the most important of the 3 branches of government.
Amen.
Are you suggesting then, Congressman Frey, that focusing on those issues was the most effective theme for your campaign?
Not necessarily. I just sort of did, put it this way, you're not going to bleed to death in every issue. I don't know enough about wheat in the Midwest to probably make an intelligent decision, but I go to people in the Agriculture Committee. But you can't bleed to death in every issue. I was willing to lose my seat over Vietnam, for instance. There's an issue that was really important to me. So you take those issues which are really up here at the top of it, and you put your heart and soul out on those. You don't ignore the other issues, you work on them, but there's some issues that are just worth winning or losing your seat.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Congressman? Did you find that this issue focus was the most effective way to reach out to likely voters?
Well, it was interesting. When I got elected to Congress first time, January of '88, the number one issue at home was the airport. The Nashville airport, about noise in and around the airport. And I went to work on that, and the first full term I had, I passed a major piece of legislation, the Noise Abatement and Reimbursement Act, which was responsible for over $100 million to be able to buy houses, insulate houses in and around the airport, which made Nashville a first-class airport. And that really set me in a very strong position. Plus, I had a major renovation at the VA hospital. And then I changed the formula on transportation funds because we're a donor state in Tennessee. As a matter of fact,
so Florida
was too. And we were only getting 79 cents on a dollar. For every dollar we sent to Washington, we were only getting 79 cents back in transportation funds. I was able, through a few others on the Transportation Committee, to get that formula changed where we're getting about 95 cents on a dollar. And it moved us where one day we were getting $360 million a year in federal dollars, and we went from $360 to $800 million a year, and it made a real difference.
Mm-hmm. And Congressman Frey, I see you nodding your head.
Oh, I think that's wonderful what they did in the donor states. That's always a fight in terms of where you're going. The formulas are set up really for the old days, where other states had a lot more power. Maybe 50 or 100 years ago even, and now we're fighting to try and catch up. Florida,
That's
Tennessee,
right.
Some of the southern states have been working hard to get their fair share.
Mm-hmm. Now, Congressman Frey, I'm going to be starting the last question with you, and it's a bit of a sensitive question. It's very different. But there are some critics who contend that because racial and ethnic minorities and young people have lower voter turnout than those who are white, those who are older, et cetera, and wealthier, that young people, racial and ethnic minorities, tend to be ignored by candidates. How do you respond to that criticism?
If they ignore them, they're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason to ignore people. You just have to give people a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Stereotypes stink. They are really, really terrible. Anytime somebody talks in those terms, put up a red flag and wonder what the heck they're talking about. So, no, I don't think that there's a lot of reasons you can always, if things don't go well, you can come up with. But young people, 45 million of them are going to vote in the millennial generation, biggest number. 40 million only baby boomers. There's more young people than old voting. So from a practical standpoint, you're dumb if you avoid them.
Okay, how about you, Congressman Clement?
I always fought for the underdog, and I'll never forget my father, and Lou referred to him a while ago, and he was governor of Tennessee for 10 years, for 3 terms. And he always had this expression, be kind to those people as you climb that ladder of success, because you're going to be meeting those same people on the way back down. And I never forgot that. And so I always reached out. I did help in Tennessee getting the law passed on the 18 to 20 age group to vote. Then they have the opportunity to vote. Then they don't even register to vote. Mm-hmm. Less than a third even registered to vote. Until finally, in this last presidential election, President Obama woke up the young people, and they really came out and voted in great numbers. Now, it's going to be real interesting this time around what the young people do, or who they vote for, or whether they vote at all. But I hope they do, no matter whether they vote Democrat or Republican, because we have too great of a country, and young people, minorities, everyone should register to vote and vote. I don't want us to be a spectator nation. I want us to be a participator nation, and that's critically important for the future of America.
And interesting, you're talking about this, show you how it overlaps. My legislation originally was the 18-year-old vote when we got
Is
that
that
passed.
right?
Yeah, and then you did it. We came out of Vietnam and all that, and it's interesting, isn't it, how just from one generation to the other, and both going in the same direction, doing it very well.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure meeting with you and discussing these issues. I've been speaking with Congressman Bob Clement, who represented Nashville and the greater Nashville region from 1988 to 2003, and Congressman Lou Frey, who represented Central Florida from 1969 to 1979. I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine, and this has been the Civics Connection.